He came into the kitchen wearing nothing but sweatpants, and I swear, for a second, I forgot how to breathe. That was my son-in-law, and I had absolutely no business feeling what I felt in that moment. Before I tell you what happened next, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because what I found under his pillow later that night changed everything. My name is Victoria, I'm 46, divorced, and I've been trying to live a quiet, structured life ever since my daughter got married and moved back in with her husband while their house is being renovated. I told myself I'd stay out of their way, cook a few meals, and pretend that nothing was bothering me. But the problem was, Max bothered me. My son-in-law Max, 29, always polite, always helpful, but something in the way he looked at me lately, like he saw through the smile, through the silence, I couldn't ignore it anymore. That morning, while my daughter was away on a business trip, Max came down early, hair messy, sleepy eyes, and sat across from me at the kitchen table. Didn't mean to wake you, he said, scratching his jaw, but the coffee you make, it's dangerous. I laughed too hard. I always did around him. I tried to play it cool, keep the distance, but when he leaned closer and said, "You ever feel like you're pretending too much?" I felt my whole body tense. I didn't answer then, but I knew he felt the same. That night, I left a note beneath his pillow. I folded it twice, placed it carefully, and locked myself in my room hoping he'd understand. It simply read, "If you've ever thought about me the way I've thought about you, meet me in the garden, midnight." I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, heart racing, wondering if I'd just destroyed everything or if I was finally setting something free. I listened for footsteps, for any sign that he'd read the note and chosen to come. Midnight ticked closer, and with each passing minute, I told myself it was better if he didn't show, safer, smarter, but part of me was begging for the opposite. At 11:58, I heard the back door creak open, the garden gate clicked shut. I held my breath for a full minute, then got up, wrapped myself in a shawl, and stepped out barefoot onto the porch. The moon was full, casting a silver glow over everything, and there he was, standing under the old pear tree, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd been waiting a lifetime for this. He didn't say a word when he saw me, just smiled, the kind of smile that says everything you're not supposed to say. I walked up to him slowly, my heart thundering, and whispered, "So you read it?" He nodded, eyes not leaving mine, and replied, "I thought I was the only one feeling it." I don't know who moved first, but a second later we were so close I could feel his breath on my lips, and he reached up, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, and said, "Tell me to stop." And I will. I didn't. I couldn't. His hands slid gently down my arms as if asking permission with every touch, and I leaned in, closing that last inch between us. I don't remember the first kiss as much as I remember the feeling afterward, like the whole world had exhaled around us, like we had stepped out of time. I wrapped my arms around his neck and he held me like he'd been waiting years, not months, to do this, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. We didn't speak, we didn't need to. The night air wrapped around us, warm and electric, the grass soft beneath our feet, the silence between us louder than words. When we finally pulled apart, he looked at me with something deeper than desire. It was understanding, longing, and something close to fear. "What happens now?" he asked. I shook my head, smiling through nerves. "I don't know, but I don't want to pretend anymore." He nodded, pressing his forehead to mine, and whispered, "Then let's not." We stood there until the first light of morning started to chase away the stars, and even though I knew the world would be waiting for us with its questions and consequences, for that moment, nothing else mattered. We snuck back into the house like teenagers, silent and careful, though the weight of what just happened hung thick in the air. I watched him disappear into the guest room, my heart pounding in my chest, my fingers still tingling from where he touched me. I closed my bedroom door behind me, leaned against it, and smiled like a fool. The next morning was quiet, too quiet. He avoided eye contact at breakfast. My daughter had returned late at night and was now cheerfully complaining about her meetings. I stirred my tea, pretending to listen, but all I could feel was the heat of his presence across the table. He didn't say a word, but when he passed by me in the hallway later, he slipped something into my hand, a small folded note. I waited until I was alone to open it. It said, Last night changed everything. I don't regret a second, but tell me, was it just the moment, or do you want more? My hands trembled as I held the paper. I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew I'd never forget the question. I kept the note in my pocket the entire day, like a secret flame burning just beneath the surface. I'd glance at it between laundry, errands, meaningless conversations, and every time, my heart would skip in the exact same way. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, lights dimmed, the hum of the fridge the only sound. I was going to write him back, I had planned to, but instead, I took a deep breath, walked quietly down the hall, and tapped twice on his door. It opened. Almost instantly, as if he'd been standing just behind it, waiting for something, maybe me. He stepped aside to let me in, but I didn't move. I just looked at him and said, "It wasn't just the moment." That's all I needed to say. His shoulders relaxed, like he'd been holding something in for days, and without a word, he pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly like he finally understood that I wasn't going anywhere. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, no urgency, just the comfort of skin against skin, breath against breath. The world was still out there, messy, complicated, impossible, but in that room, in that quiet, I chose him, and for the first time in years, someone chose me too. The following morning, sunlight poured through the curtains, golden and soft, like nothing had ever gone wrong in the world. I woke up with my head on his chest, his arm wrapped around me protectively. As if even in sleep he didn't want to let go. For a while I just lay there, listening to his heartbeat, wondering how something so forbidden could feel this safe, this right. But reality, of course, was never far behind. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him, and made my way back to my room. Before the house stirred, my daughter was already in the kitchen. By the time I got dressed, cheerful and oblivious, talking about weekend plans and how she wanted us all to have dinner together that night. I nodded, smiled, pretended everything was normal, but the truth pressed heavy against my chest like a second skin. When Max walked into the kitchen minutes later, our eyes met for just a second, and I saw it in his face. He felt it too, the weight, the pull, the impossibility of pretending we hadn't just crossed a line we could never uncross. He sat across from me, and for the first time, there was no smile, just silence, thick and charged. Then, as my daughter turned her back to grab something from the fridge, he slid a new note across the table. It read, "Tell me what to do, say the word and I'll leave her, or I'll forget last night ever happened." I read it 3 times, my fingers trembling, my heart in my throat. The choice was mine now, but was I brave enough to make it? I folded the note slowly, pressing it between my palms as if that would quiet the storm it had stirred inside me. My daughter turned back around, laughing about something trivial, completely unaware that her entire life sat balanced on the edge of a decision I hadn't planned to make that day. I excused myself, said I needed air, and stepped out onto the porch, my breath coming shallow and fast. The garden looked the same as it did that night under the pear tree, but everything inside me had changed. Max followed minutes later, careful, silent. He didn't say anything, just waited. I turned to face him, my voice barely a whisper. "You would leave her for me?" His eyes didn't flinch. "I'd leave everything for you, if you asked me to." I closed my eyes and felt the weight of it all, love, guilt, fear, desire, and something I hadn't let myself feel in years, hope. I took his hand, laced my fingers through his, and said quietly, "Then don't leave her yet, not until I'm ready to stop lying." He nodded slowly, pulling me into his arms, and I let myself disappear into the safety of him, knowing full well what it meant. And even though the story wasn't over yet, I realized something important. Sometimes love doesn't come at the perfect time or in the right way, but when it does, you know it's real because you're willing to risk everything just to hold on to it a little longer. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of rain tapping gently against the window, and the steady, distant rhythm of Max moving around in the guest room. I kept replaying everything in my head, his words, the warmth of his hands, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that made sense in a world full of lies. Around 2 in the morning, I finally got up. I couldn't stay in my room any longer, not with my thoughts screaming louder than the rain. I stepped out into the hallway barefoot, the house dark and still, and I found myself standing in front of his door. I didn't knock, I just waited, and then the door opened slowly, like he had felt me standing there. He looked at me, eyes tired but soft, and whispered, "You don't have to say anything." I didn't. I just walked in, closed the door behind me, and let the silence wrap around us. We didn't speak, we didn't rush, we just lay down next to each other, fully dressed, our hands barely touching, but somehow it was more intimate than anything else we'd shared. At some point I fell asleep on his chest, and for the first time in what felt like years, my mind was quiet. In the morning, as the sun began to rise, I found another note tucked under my hand. It simply said, "Even if we only ever have this, one night, one bed, one quiet moment, I'll never forget how it felt to be yours." And I knew then that no matter what the future held, a part of me would always belong to him. I hid the note in the pocket of my robe like it was a relic from another life, something too fragile for the light of day. When I walked into the kitchen, my daughter was already awake, humming to herself, making coffee. She glanced at me and smiled. "You look peaceful this morning." I managed a soft laugh, nodded, and poured myself some tea. I couldn't meet her eyes, not because I didn't love her, but because I was slowly realizing I had found love in the wrong place and at exactly the wrong time. Max entered moments later, hair still messy, wearing that same quiet expression like the night hadn't changed him either, but it had. We'd both felt the shift and we both knew there was no easy way forward. The next few days passed with unbearable slowness. Every shared glance, every brush of his arm as we passed in the hallway, was laced with tension, with memory, with something we couldn't name out loud. And then, one afternoon, when I thought things had returned to some pretend version of normal, I found a package on my bed. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, and inside the first page was his handwriting. "If we can't speak the truth in this house, then write it. Start with this. When did you first know?" I sat on the edge of my bed, running my fingers over the words, and tears welled in my eyes because I knew exactly when I first knew. I just never thought he'd feel it too. And so I picked up a pen, opened to the second page, and wrote, "The night you fixed the porch light," and didn't say a word, but looked at me like I was worth saving. The journal was now a secret between us, a space where we could exist, unfiltered and censored, even if only in ink. And it was there, in the pages, that our story truly began. 1 week later, the journal disappeared. I searched the guest room, my nightstand, every drawer, gone. My heart sank, not because of the words themselves, but because of what they meant. They were ours, our confessions, our promises, written quietly in the shadows. I thought maybe he'd taken it with him to work, or maybe he was scared and wanted to end it quietly without saying goodbye. But then, that evening, I found it again. On my pillow. Wrapped in soft tissue paper, with a single lavender flower tucked inside, and inside, on the last page, was a note written in his familiar hand. "Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. I'll be waiting at the train station. If you're there, I'll know. If not, I'll forget everything and go back to pretending. But if you come, we'll finally stop hiding." I clutched the journal to my chest, heart racing, mind spinning. I had until sunrise to decide, lose everything, or choose everything. And as the clock struck 6:59, a figure stepped onto the empty platform, a leather journal in his hand, eyes scanning the horizon. And then he saw her. Me. Holding nothing but a single note in my palm that read, "Yes."